I took them in to repay their debts, but those women paid me back in ways I'll never forget. James had always believed that helping others was one of the most important things a person could do.
Even though he lived a modest life in a small town, he never hesitated to lend a hand when he saw someone struggling. His repair shop was tiny, barely big enough to store his tools and a few old pieces of furniture he fixed for his neighbors. Life was simple, and money was tight, but James felt content. He often told himself that happiness wasn't measured by wealth, but by the difference one could make in the lives of others. It was a chilly autumn morning when James first heard about Maria and Lena.
They were two women from his town who had recently fallen into serious financial trouble.
Spread. Rumors had spread about their situation, but James didn't listen to gossip. Instead, he wanted to understand the real story.
From what he gathered, Maria had lost her job at a local cafe after the business had to close due to low sales, and Lena's family had been struggling with medical expenses that left her drowning in debt.
Both women were hardworking, honest, and kind-hearted, but life had thrown challenges their way that seemed impossible to overcome alone. James remembered a time when his own family had faced hardship years ago. His father had lost his job, and for months their household had barely managed to get by. A neighbor had quietly helped them by lending food, sharing old clothes, and offering small amounts of money without asking for anything in return. That experience had left a deep impression on James. He understood how a single act of kindness could change someone's life. Now he saw an opportunity to do the same for Maria and Lena. He decided to reach out to them. It wasn't an easy decision because his home was small. He lived alone in a tiny house attached to his repair shop.
There were just 2 rooms, a tiny kitchen, and a small bathroom. Yet the thought of letting the women struggle outside while he could help weighed heavily on his heart.
After careful consideration, he called Maria and Lena and invited them to come over. He explained that he had some space in his home and wanted to give them a safe place to stay until they could get back on their feet. Breaths. When Maria arrived, James noticed the worry etched on her face. Her eyes seemed tired, and there was a quiet sadness about her.
She barely spoke at first, but James greeted her warmly, showing her where she could place her few belongings. He offered her a small room he had kept for storage, transforming it into a temporary living space with a simple bed and a small dresser.
Maria thanked him quietly, almost as if she could hardly believe someone would help her without expecting anything in return. Lena arrived a few hours later.
This tea goddamn matter.
She was younger, full of nervous energy, and carried a backpack that seemed too heavy for her small frame. She explained her situation, sharing the struggles she had faced with debts piling up and bills she could not pay. James listened carefully, offering words of comfort. He showed her where she could stay, and like Maria, she was amazed by the kindness of someone who didn't know her well, but still wanted to help. For the first time in months, both women felt a sense of relief. They were not alone anymore. Living together was not without its challenges. James had his daily routines, working long hours in his repair shop and taking care of his home. Maria and Lena were adjusting to a new environment, and there were moments of tension. Maria was quiet and reserved, often keeping to herself, while Lena's anxiety sometimes made her impatient. Small disagreements would arise about chores, schedules, and even the way things were organized in the house. But James reminded himself that these were temporary challenges and that patience and understanding could help them all adjust to this new way of living. Despite the difficulties, James found joy in having the women around. He enjoyed hearing their stories about the past, their hopes for the future, and the small dreams they still held on to despite their hardships. He noticed the little things, how Maria would carefully fold clothes she was given, how Lena tried to cook simple meals to help out, even if she made mistakes in the process. These small gestures were full of gratitude and warmth, and they reminded James why he had decided to help in the first place. James also began to see how his own life was changing. He no longer felt the quiet loneliness that had settled in his small home. There was a sense of purpose now, a feeling that he was part of something meaningful. Each morning he would wake up and see the women preparing for the day, and he felt a quiet pride in knowing that his simple act of kindness had given them a chance to breathe again. Their presence brought life, energy, and a sense of family to his home, and he cherished every moment.
He would often think about the future and wonder how long it would take for Maria and Lena to recover.
Would they find jobs soon? Would they be able to pay off their debts? These questions sometimes worried him, but he pushed those thoughts aside. For now, he focused on the present, on helping them rebuild their lives step by step. He understood that real change took time, and that rushing it could do more harm than good. James also made sure to teach them practical skills to help them regain independence. He showed Maria some simple repairs around the house, explaining how small fixes could save money. He encouraged Lena to organize her finances carefully, teaching her how to track expenses and prioritize bills. These were small lessons, but they were powerful. They gave the women confidence and hope that they could eventually manage on their own. Over the weeks, the three of them began to develop a routine. Mornings were for work and errands, afternoons for learning new skills or completing chores, and evenings for sharing meals and talking about their day. They laughed together, shared stories, and slowly began to build a bond that felt like family. James realized that helping someone wasn't just about providing shelter or money, it was about offering support, encouragement, and understanding. The emotional connection they were forming was just as important as any practical assistance. One evening, as they sat around the small kitchen table, James watched Maria and Lena laughing over a story from their past. He felt a warmth in his heart that he hadn't felt in years. This simple moment, filled with laughter and companionship, made all the challenges worthwhile. He realized that taking them in had not only helped them, it had changed his life, too. He had given, but he had also received in ways he never expected. Friendship, gratitude, and the joy of making a real difference.
By the end of the first few months, Maria and Lena were starting to regain their confidence.
They were more organized, more hopeful, and more determined to overcome their challenges. James could see the transformation in their faces and in their actions. The worry that had clouded their eyes was slowly lifting, replaced by a quiet determination and a sense of possibility. James felt proud, not because of anything he had done for them alone, but because they were working hard to rebuild their own lives with his support. James often reflected on the lessons he was learning through this experience. He realized that kindness was never wasted, even if it came with difficulties or sacrifices. He also understood that helping someone was not just a one-time act. It was an ongoing commitment, a journey shared together. And through it all, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had taken them in to help repay their debts, but he was beginning to see that life had a way of repaying kindness in ways that could never be measured in money. As the days turned into weeks, James looked forward to each new morning. He knew that challenges would continue to come, but he also knew that with patience, understanding, and a willingness to help, they could face anything together. His small home, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with life, laughter, and hope. And in his heart, James knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would leave a lasting impact on all their lives. Life at James's home began to settle into a routine, but it was far from perfect. The first few weeks had been quiet and awkward, filled with small adjustments. Maria was still reserved, often keeping to herself, while Lena seemed restless and anxious. James tried to be patient, understanding that they were both carrying burdens that had weighed on them for months. Their financial struggles were not easy to forget, and the worry showed in every decision they made. The tiny house, which had once felt empty and peaceful, now echoed with tension, small arguments, and moments of unease. Maria had always been a quiet soul. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and her polite smiles hid the depth of her worry. James noticed that she would sometimes sit by the window for hours, staring outside as if searching for a way out of her problems. Brash. He understood that Maria needed time to process her emotions. But it wasn't always easy. At times, her silence felt heavy, and James wondered if he had done enough to make her feel welcome. He remembered how it felt to be alone in a difficult situation, and decided to give her space while also offering support whenever she seemed ready.
Lena, in contrast, was full of nervous energy.
She constantly checked her phone, worrying about overdue bills and missed calls from creditors. Her anxiety often made her impatient, and she would sometimes snap at small inconveniences. She wanted to contribute, to do something that mattered, but the financial weight on her shoulders made her feel powerless. James understood that her frustration wasn't directed at him personally, but the tension in the house sometimes made him wonder if he had taken on more than he could handle. Despite these challenges, James reminded himself of why he had taken them in. Both women were honest and hard-working, and they deserved a chance to rebuild their lives. He saw glimpses of their true selves beneath the worry. Maria had a gentle smile that occasionally broke through her seriousness, and Lena had a spark of creativity and determination that showed she wouldn't give up easily. These small moments of warmth reminded James that his efforts were worthwhile. The first real test of their patience came one rainy afternoon. A sudden leak appeared in the ceiling of the small living room, dripping water onto the floor. James quickly grabbed buckets and towels to contain the mess, but the stress of fixing it while managing his work and supporting the women made him feel exhausted. Maria immediately offered to help, carefully moving furniture and keeping the water contained, while Lena tried to clean up the floor as best as she could. Their willingness to assist, even amidst their own worries, reminded James why he had opened his home to them. Over time, small disagreements became more frequent, though never serious. James noticed tension rising over chores, meal preparations, and even the way personal spaces were organized. Maria preferred quiet and order, while Lena thrived in movement and activity. Sometimes they would clash over the smallest details, a misplaced dish, a forgotten towel, or the timing of a shared task. James found himself mediating, explaining that they all needed to be patient with one another. He reminded them that living together was not easy, but mutual respect and understanding could make even small spaces feel comfortable. Work at the repair shop also added pressure. James often returned home exhausted, yet he found himself needing to support the women emotionally, help them plan their days, and solve minor conflicts. Some evenings he would sit alone after they had gone to bed, reflecting on the day and wondering if he was doing enough. It was exhausting, but James also knew that growth often came through challenge. This situation wasn't just helping Maria and Lena, it was teaching all three of them patience, understanding, and resilience. James also encouraged both women to look for opportunities to contribute in ways that suited their abilities. Maria, who had a talent for sewing and crafts, began repairing old clothes and small items around the house. Lena, with her curiosity for numbers and organization, started helping manage the household expenses. These small acts of contribution were not just practical. They gave the women a sense of purpose, a feeling that they were actively part of rebuilding their lives rather than merely receiving help. James saw the change slowly unfold. Despite these small victories, there were days when hope felt fragile. Maria would sometimes retreat into her room for hours, overwhelmed by the weight of her past debts and current worries. Lena occasionally broke down, crying quietly over missed opportunities and mounting bills. James realized that their struggles were not just financial, they were emotional. Healing and rebuilding took time, patience, and understanding, and he was determined to stay by their side through it all. One day, James decided to introduce a small routine to bring a sense of stability to their lives. Every morning they would sit together for a simple breakfast, sharing plans for the day. This became a moment of connection, a small ritual that reminded them they were not alone. James noticed how these shared moments slowly eased tension. Maria began speaking more often, sharing her thoughts and ideas. Lena's energy became more focused, and she started to channel her worry into productive tasks. The atmosphere in the house, while not perfect, began to feel more like a supportive family than just a temporary shelter. James also made an effort to show appreciation for their efforts, no matter how small. When Maria fixed a tear in his old jacket, he praised her skill. When Lena found a way to save money on groceries, he expressed genuine gratitude. These gestures of recognition reinforced the idea that their contributions mattered. James understood that emotional support and encouragement were just as important as financial or practical help. As the weeks turned into months, the women began to slowly regain their confidence. Maria started to explore job opportunities she had previously thought were impossible. Lena began experimenting with small online projects to earn extra income. James encouraged them to take these steps, reminding them that recovery was a journey, not a race. He admired their determination, even when progress seemed slow. The house, once tense and uncertain, gradually transformed into a place of quiet determination and mutual support. James also began to see how the experience was changing him. He realized that helping others in times of hardship was not always simple or easy. It required patience, understanding, and sometimes personal sacrifice. Yet, it was also deeply rewarding. The small victories, the moments of laughter, and even the challenges themselves became lessons in compassion and humanity. Purpose. Knowing that his small acts of kindness were making a real difference in the lives of Maria and Lena. One evening, as the three of them sat together by the fireplace, James reflected on the journey so far. Narration. They had faced tension, uncertainty, and emotional struggles, yet they had persevered. The house that had once felt cramped and uncomfortable now held warmth, connection, and a shared sense of purpose. Maria and Lena were slowly finding their footing, and James was proud, not just of what they were achieving, but of the bonds they were forming. Through this period, James learned that helping someone was never a straightforward path. It required patience, understanding, and a willingness to face challenges together. There would always be setbacks, disagreements, and moments of doubt, but the process of supporting others through hardship created bonds that could not be broken. He realized that even in the smallest acts of kindness, offering a place to stay, listening without judgment, sharing skills and knowledge, there was immense power to transform lives. By the end of this chapter in their lives, Maria and Lena were beginning to shine in small, meaningful ways. Maria's confidence was growing as she took on small projects around the house and even offered to help neighbors with minor repairs and sewing. Lena's energy was more focused and purposeful, as she managed household finances and explored small income opportunities online. James watched with quiet pride, knowing that while they still had challenges ahead, the foundation of trust, support, and shared effort had been firmly established.
And so, life continued in James's small home.
There were still difficult days, moments of worry, and occasional arguments, but there was also laughter, cooperation, and the quiet satisfaction of shared growth. James understood that this was just the beginning of a long journey for all three of them. They had faced the rising challenges of living together, balancing responsibilities, and coping with emotional stress. Now, they were learning to support each other, to contribute, and to rebuild their lives step by step. Through it all, James realized a simple truth. Helping someone in need was never about expecting repayment in return. It was about giving hope, offering support, and believing in the resilience of others. The women had entered his home with heavy hearts, burdened by debts and despair, but through patience, effort, and mutual understanding, they were beginning to regain a sense of possibility. And James, too, was learning that kindness, even when tested by difficulty, could bring unexpected rewards in the form of friendship, gratitude, and shared growth. Life in James's home had started to feel more balanced. The small house, which had once been quiet and tense, now carried an air of cautious optimism. Maria and Lena were slowly settling into routines, contributing in ways that made the house run more smoothly, and James felt a quiet pride in their progress. Yet even as things improved, life had a way of testing the strength of anyone's resolve. What James, Maria, and Lena didn't realize was that they were about to face a challenge far bigger than the small disagreements or minor mishaps they had been navigating. It began on a typical weekday morning. James was opening the repair shop when a notice arrived, slipped under the door. He unfolded it carefully, his heart sinking as he read. The shop's roof, weakened by age and weather, needed urgent repairs. The cost was high, far beyond what James could afford on his own. He felt a wave of worry wash over him. This was his livelihood. If the roof collapsed or worsened, he could lose everything he had worked for. Panic bubbled up, but James took a deep breath, knowing that worrying alone would not solve anything. Maria and Lena were in the kitchen preparing breakfast. When James shared the news, both women were visibly shocked. Maria's calm demeanor wavered for a moment, and she bit her lip in worry. Lena's eyes widened, and she instantly began thinking aloud about how they might cover the expense. James appreciated their concern, but he also realized that their anxiety could spiral if he didn't stay calm. He reminded them gently that it wasn't their responsibility, but that didn't stop the fear from lingering in the small house. As the day progressed, James felt the weight of multiple challenges pressing down on him. Not only did he have to worry about the shop and its repairs, but Maria and Lena were also facing setbacks with their debts. Maria had received a call from a lender asking for payment she could not provide, and Lena discovered an unexpected medical bill that added to her stress. It seemed as though the problems were piling up all at once, and James began to feel the exhaustion creeping in. He wondered if he had bitten off more than he could handle by taking them in. That evening, tension in the house reached a peak. Maria and Lena, each overwhelmed in their own way, began arguing over small things, meal plans, household chores, and even the way tasks were being divided. Their worries and frustrations, though understandable, made the atmosphere heavy. James tried to mediate, reminding them that they were all in this together, but the strain was palpable. He realized that the emotional weight of their struggles could not be ignored. It wasn't just about money. It was about fear, uncertainty, and the pressure of trying to recover from setbacks. For the first time since taking them in, James felt the urge to consider asking them to leave. He sat alone in the dim light of the living room, hands clasped, staring at the floor. His heart ached at the thought, knowing that these women had nowhere else to turn. Yet the practical reality was overwhelming. Could he manage the repair costs, support them emotionally, and still keep his life together? Doubts gnawed at him, but deep down he knew he couldn't abandon them. He remembered the kindness shown to his own family during his childhood struggles and realized that sometimes helping others required enduring hardship alongside them. The next morning, James decided to take a proactive approach. He broke the repair task into smaller, manageable steps. First, he would secure temporary covers to prevent leaks from worsening. Then, he would gather materials gradually and perform repairs bit by bit.
He knew it would be exhausting, but tackling the problem slowly felt less overwhelming than letting it loom as a disaster.
He also encouraged Maria and Lena to see small ways they could contribute, not with money but with effort and support. Maria helped organize the materials, ensuring everything was ready when James needed it, while Lena kept track of expenses and suggested creative ways to save. Despite these efforts, the strain continued. Maria's quiet anxiety sometimes made her hesitant to participate, and Lena's energy occasionally became erratic. James had to be patient, guiding them gently and offering reassurance. There were nights when the three of them sat silently, the weight of their challenges pressing on their shoulders. Yet even in these moments, there was a subtle sense of connection. Each of them understood that they were facing adversity together,
and that realization provided a small comfort amid the pressure.
As the days passed, James began to notice changes in the women.
Maria, who had been withdrawn, started speaking more often about her thoughts and ideas. She suggested practical solutions for small repairs around the house and even offered to help with the shop when she could. Lena, who had once been anxious and scattered, began to focus her energy on tasks she could manage. She organized the kitchen, kept track of bills, and found small ways to earn a little extra income. These contributions were not monumental, but they carried significance. They showed resilience, determination, and a desire to overcome obstacles. One particularly stressful evening tested all of them further. A sudden storm hit the town, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. The temporary covers James had put on the roof were barely holding, and water began to seep through. Panic threatened to take over, but James stayed calm, instructing Maria and Lena to move furniture and contain the water.
Together they worked through the night, shifting buckets, drying floors, and patching leaks as best they could.
The experience, though exhausting, revealed a new layer of strength in all three of them. They were not just surviving. They were learning to face crises as a team. This crisis also strengthened the bond between James and the women.
Maria, who had been reserved, opened up about her fears for the first time.
She admitted how helpless she had felt when her debts began to spiral and how grateful she was for James's support.
Lena, too, shared her own struggles, tears rolling down her cheeks as she described the pressure of trying to manage finances and care for herself.
James listened patiently, offering comfort and encouragement. The emotional release brought them closer, and he realized that supporting someone meant more than fixing physical problems. It meant being present for their emotional journey as well. As the storm passed and the sun returned, the trio took stock of what they had accomplished. The roof was temporarily patched, the house was safe, and their spirits were lifted by their teamwork. Though the road ahead was still challenging, they had survived a true test of their resilience. James felt a quiet pride, not in himself alone, but in the woman who had worked alongside him, facing fear and uncertainty, with courage and determination.
Through this major struggle, James noticed subtle shifts in Maria and Lena's character.
Maria had grown more confident, willing to take initiative rather than wait for instructions. Lena's anxiety had not disappeared, but she had learned to channel it into productive efforts. The crisis, as stressful as it had been, had forced them all to grow. James realized that sometimes the most difficult moments in life were the ones that revealed hidden strengths and forged deeper connections. The experience also taught James an important lesson about patience and perseverance. He had always believed in helping others, but this challenge showed him that true support required more than good intentions. It required endurance, understanding, and a willingness to share in the hardships of those you cared for. He understood that progress was rarely smooth, and setbacks were not failures. They were opportunities to learn, adapt, and strengthen bonds. Breath. In the days following the storm, the women began to take on more responsibilities around the house. Maria started organizing small repairs and offering her sewing skills to neighbors for a little extra income.
He glances around in despair. Lena, motivated by the recent crisis, began researching ways to manage finances more effectively and even explored online work opportunities.
Bange. James watched with quiet satisfaction as they took ownership of their lives, proving that even in moments of despair, determination and teamwork could create hope.
The crisis also helped James reflect on his own life.
He realized that challenges were a part of every journey, and that helping others often meant facing difficulties head-on. Yet he felt a profound sense of fulfillment knowing that his decision to take Maria and Lena in was making a real difference. Their struggles had become his struggles, but he was learning that shared challenges could deepen trust, compassion, and resilience. By the end of this period, James felt a sense of cautious optimism. The immediate danger of the roof had been addressed, and Maria and Lena were beginning to find their footing once more. The house, though still modest and imperfect, felt alive with determination and hope. Rams. James understood that life would continue to bring obstacles, but he also knew that together they could face whatever came next. Their shared struggle had not only tested their patience and resilience, it had strengthened the bond between them and revealed the power of kindness, perseverance, and mutual support. And so, life continued in the small home. Challenges would come and go, but James, Maria, and Lena had learned to navigate adversity together. They were beginning to understand that true strength was not about facing life alone, but about supporting one another, sharing burdens, and growing through difficulties. Period of struggle, intense as it had been, was teaching them valuable lessons they would carry for the rest of their lives. After the storm had passed and the roof had been temporarily repaired, life in James's small home began to shift in subtle, meaningful ways. The major crisis had tested their strength, patience, and determination, and it had also revealed the resilience within each of them. James could see it in the way Maria and Lena moved through the house now, more confident, more focused, and more willing to take initiative. The women had faced a true test of hardship, and while it had been exhausting and stressful, they were beginning to rise above it, showing that growth often comes through struggle.
Maria, who had once been quiet and hesitant, started taking small steps toward independence.
She began spending time learning new skills, like repairing simple household items and sewing small projects to sell to neighbors. James encouraged her, praising every effort she made, no matter how small. At first, Maria was shy and unsure, worried she might fail or make mistakes. But with James's gentle guidance and reassurance, she slowly gained confidence. Every item she repaired or created was a victory, and James celebrated each one with genuine joy, reminding her that progress wasn't about perfection. It was about effort and persistence. Lena, on the other hand, had transformed in a different way. The anxiety that had once dominated her every move had begun to turn into determination. She started organizing the household more efficiently, keeping track of bills and creating small ways to earn income online. She experimented with selling handmade crafts, offering assistance to neighbors, and even learning some basic skills that could help her secure a future job. Lena's restless energy, once a source of tension, became a driving force for productivity. James noticed that the small tasks she took on were not just helping the household. They were restoring her sense of self-worth. Together, the women began to take more initiative around the home. Maria suggested ways to optimize space in the tiny house, and Lena created a small chart to track their daily tasks and goals. James felt a quiet sense of pride in seeing them collaborate. What had once been a household filled with tension and uncertainty was now slowly transforming into one of teamwork and cooperation. Even small victories, like managing to repair a leaking faucet or organizing a cluttered corner of the living room, felt monumental in their shared journey. One afternoon, James watched Maria and Lena laughing while they worked together on a small project. Maria was teaching Lena how to mend a torn piece of clothing, and Lena was excitedly showing Maria a clever trick she had learned to make the task easier. The scene warmed James's heart. The women had come to his home as strangers burdened by worry and despair, but now they were working side by side, sharing skills, laughter, and a growing sense of connection. It was a transformation he had hoped for, but seeing it unfold in reality was deeply moving. James also noticed that the women were beginning to repay him in ways that were not just practical but meaningful. Maria would leave small notes of appreciation, thanking him for his patience and kindness. Lena would prepare little meals or surprise him with simple acts of thoughtfulness, like organizing his tools or cleaning areas of the house without being asked. These gestures were far more valuable than money. They were expressions of gratitude, care, and a recognition that James's support had helped them regain hope. As the weeks passed, James continued to encourage the women to take small steps toward their own independence. He helped Maria research part-time work in the town, guiding her to opportunities where her skills could be useful. Lena explored online platforms to sell her handmade crafts and offered tutoring for basic computer skills to neighbors in exchange for small earnings. Each step they took, no matter how minor, was celebrated in the house. James would often say, "Every small effort counts. Don't underestimate yourself." And he meant it sincerely. Life, however, wasn't without its small setbacks.
There were days when Maria felt discouraged, doubting her abilities and fearing that she would never fully recover from the financial struggles she had faced. Lena sometimes became overwhelmed, thinking she wasn't earning enough or failing to meet her own high expectations.
On these days, James would sit with them, listening patiently, offering guidance and reminding them of how far they had already come. He understood that rebuilding one's life after hardship was not a straight path. It was full of twists, doubts, and moments of fear. One morning, a neighbor came by with a request for a small repair job. James immediately thought of Maria and suggested she try it herself, offering support and advice but letting her handle the task. Maria was nervous at first, but as she worked, she discovered she was capable of more than she had realized. The neighbor was delighted with the repair, praising her effort and skill. Maria returned home beaming, her confidence boosted in a way that no words could fully capture. That day, James realized that empowerment often comes through experience, not just encouragement. Lena, too, experienced small triumphs. She managed to sell a few of her handmade items online and received compliments from customers praising her attention to detail and creativity. The positive feedback lifted her spirits, and she began to see that her hard work could bring real rewards. James celebrated these moments alongside her, knowing that these small successes were laying the foundation for a more secure future. He understood that rebuilding lives required time, patience, and perseverance, and he felt grateful to witness their growth firsthand. The dynamic in the house began to shift. Where tension and uncertainty had once dominated, now there was laughter, conversation, and collaboration. The women were no longer just recipients of James's kindness. They were active participants in creating a supportive environment. Maria shared ideas for small projects she could do to earn extra money, while Lena suggested ways to save on household expenses. Together, they brainstormed solutions, faced challenges, and celebrated victories, big and small.
James observed quietly, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment as he watched the women regain their sense of purpose.
One evening, as they sat together after a long day of work and small accomplishments, James reflected on the transformation that had taken place. The women had come into his home burdened by debt, fear, and uncertainty, and now they were finding their confidence, independence, and joy again. It was a reminder that true repayment was not always about money. It could be expressed through effort, gratitude, and the willingness to grow. James realized that he had not only helped them, but they had also given him something invaluable in return: companionship, trust, and the joy of shared progress. James also noticed that the women had begun to support each other in ways that were independent of him. Maria would help Lena with tasks she found difficult, and Lena would cheer Maria on when she tried something new. Their bond, once fragile and tentative, had strengthened into mutual trust and encouragement. The house, once a place of tension and uncertainty, had transformed into a hub of collaboration and hope. The energy in the home was now filled with determination, laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of shared effort. As the weeks turned into months, the women continued to thrive in small but meaningful ways. Maria took on a part-time job repairing clothes for neighbors, slowly earning extra income and gaining confidence in her abilities.
Lena expanded her small online business, selling handmade items and tutoring neighbors in basic computer skills.
James helped when needed, but he gradually allowed them more independence, trusting them to manage their tasks and make decisions. He watched with pride as they grew more capable, resilient, and self-assured. Through this period, James realized an important truth. Helping someone was not just about providing shelter or resources. It was about fostering confidence, encouraging growth, and creating opportunities for independence. By taking small steps, Maria and Lena were not only repaying his kindness in practical ways but also developing the skills and self-belief they would need to thrive in the future. Their repayment was not measured in money, but in effort, progress, and the genuine appreciation they showed every day. By the end of this period, the house had truly transformed. What had once been a small, tense space filled with worry and uncertainty was now alive with energy, collaboration, and shared determination. Maria and Lena had grown stronger, more confident, and more capable of facing life's challenges. James, too, had grown through the experience, learning patience, resilience, and the profound satisfaction that comes from helping others reclaim their lives. And so, life in the small home continued. The women were no longer simply being helped. They were active participants in shaping their own futures. Their efforts, gratitude, and growth had become a living testament to the power of kindness, patience, and shared struggle. James realized that the true repayment of his generosity was not measured in money or material gain, but in the lasting bonds, renewed confidence, and hope that had taken root within their hearts. Months had passed since James had first taken Maria and Lena into his home. The house that had once been quiet, tense, and filled with worry was now a place of warmth, laughter, and shared effort. The women had grown stronger, more confident, and more capable of facing life's challenges. James watched them closely, feeling a deep sense of pride, not only in what they had achieved, but in the people they had become. Their journey had been long and filled with obstacles, but the hard work, patience, and determination they had shown had transformed their lives, as well as his own. Maria had come a long way. The quiet, hesitant woman who had arrived months ago, carrying the weight of her debts and the sadness of uncertainty, had blossomed into someone capable and confident. Her part-time sewing projects had expanded into a small business helping neighbors repair and customize clothes. Every item she completed brought her not just income, but pride. James often watched her at work, marveling at her patience, skill, and care. She had learned to trust herself again, to believe in her abilities, and to see that mistakes were part of growth rather than signs of failure. Lena's transformation was equally remarkable. Her restless energy, once a source of tension, had become a driving force for productivity. She had continued to expand her online business, selling handmade crafts and tutoring neighbors in basic computer skills. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them with courage, creativity, and determination. The anxiety that had once controlled her actions had lessened, replaced by a sense of purpose and self-reliance. James noticed how her confidence had grown, how she now approached problems with calm thoughtfulness instead of panic. The women's gratitude toward James was evident, but it was not expressed in money or repayment of debts. Instead, it came through their actions, care, and thoughtfulness. Maria would leave notes of appreciation, thanking him for his patience and guidance. Lena prepared small meals or organized areas of the house without being asked. They listened to him when he offered advice, supported him in small ways, and treated him as more than just a helper. They treated him as family. Their gestures, simple as they might seem, carried immense meaning. And James realized that the true repayment of kindness often came in the form of love, respect, and shared humanity.
One evening, James noticed the women quietly whispering to each other in the living room.
Curious, he asked what they were planning. They smiled and explained that they wanted to do something special for him, a way to show their gratitude and appreciation for everything he had done. James felt a warmth in his chest, touched by their thoughtfulness. He had never expected repayment in any form. He had acted out of genuine kindness, yet the gesture itself filled him with joy.
The next day, Maria and Lena surprised James with a small farewell dinner.
They had prepared a simple but delicious meal, decorated the dining area with handmade items, and even repaired some old furniture that James had neglected for years. They presented him with a handcrafted gift each, along with handwritten letters expressing their heartfelt thanks. Maria wrote about how his kindness had given her hope when she felt hopeless, and how she had learned to trust in herself again. Lena shared her gratitude for his patience, guidance, and unwavering support, explaining that she now felt capable of facing life's challenges on her own. James was deeply moved. He realized that the repayment he had received was far more valuable than money or material gifts. The women had given him trust, love, and gratitude in a way that could never be measured. They had grown through their struggles, developed independence, and learned the importance of resilience, all because someone had believed in them when they could not believe in themselves. James understood that this was the true reward of kindness, seeing others thrive, finding hope again, and creating connections that would last a lifetime.
In the weeks that followed, Maria and Lena prepared to leave the small house.
Maria had secured a stable part-time job repairing and sewing for neighbors, and she had saved enough to move into a small apartment nearby. Lena had expanded her online business enough to support herself, and she had even started teaching a few local students basic computer skills. Both women were ready to take the next step in their lives, armed with skills, confidence, and determination. James felt a mixture of pride and bittersweet sadness. He had grown attached to them, but he knew it was time for them to continue their journey independently. Before leaving, Maria and Lena sat with James one last time. They reflected on the journey they had shared, the challenges they had overcome, and the lessons they had learned. Maria thanked him for seeing her potential when she could not see it herself. Lena expressed her gratitude for the patience and understanding that had allowed her to regain her confidence. James smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment and peace. He realized that life was full of opportunities to make a difference, and that even small acts of kindness could create ripples that lasted far beyond the moment. The farewell was emotional. There were tears, hugs, and promises to stay in touch. James watched as Maria and Lena left the small home, carrying with them the lessons, skills, and confidence they had gained. The house felt quieter, but it was no longer filled with worry or tension. It held the echoes of growth, resilience, and shared effort. Profound sense of satisfaction. He had helped these women not only in practical ways but in emotional and personal growth, and the impact of his kindness would continue to resonate in their lives for years to come. Reflecting on the experience, James realized several important truths. He learned that helping someone in need was never about expecting repayment. True kindness often required patience, endurance, and sometimes personal sacrifice, but the rewards were immeasurable. The women had repaid him not with money, but with gratitude, love, and the demonstration of their growth. He also understood that adversity could be a powerful teacher. The struggles they had faced together had revealed strengths they didn't know they possessed and forged bonds that could not be broken. James also noticed how the experience had changed him. Living through the challenges alongside Maria and Lena had taught him patience, resilience, and empathy. He had seen firsthand the transformative power of kindness, and he knew that helping others was one of the most meaningful ways to create a positive impact in the world. The experience reminded him that life was about connection, support, and the courage to stand by someone during their most difficult times. In the months that followed, James continued his life in the small home, but he carried the lessons of the past year with him. He found joy in his work, satisfaction in helping neighbors with small repairs, and a renewed sense of purpose in supporting those around him. The memories of Maria and Lena remained vivid, reminding him that every act of kindness, no matter how small, could change lives in ways that were far beyond measurement.
Occasionally, he would receive messages and updates from the women.
Maria shared her latest sewing projects, sometimes asking for advice or showing new techniques she had learned. Lena sent photos of her online sales and tutoring sessions, expressing gratitude for the skills and confidence she had gained. James felt a deep sense of pride in their achievements, but he knew that while their journeys were far from over, they were now equipped to face life with courage and independence.
The experience also strengthened James's belief in human kindness.
He understood that helping others was not about recognition or reward. It was about compassion, empathy, and the willingness to invest time and effort in someone's well-being. Maria and Lena had shown him that repayment often comes in unexpected ways. In smiles, laughter, growth, and the quiet knowledge that someone's life is better because of your support. These were gifts far more valuable than anything money could buy. Looking back, James realized that taking the women in had been one of the most significant decisions of his life. It had tested him, challenged him, and sometimes overwhelmed him. But it had also brought immense joy, fulfillment, and connection. The women had not only regained their independence, they had enriched his life with gratitude, love, and the reminder of the importance of human connection. It was a lesson he would carry forever, that true kindness creates ripples, changing lives in ways that are profound, lasting, and beautiful. And so, life continued. The small house once filled with worry and uncertainty now held memories of growth, resilience, and shared triumph. James continued to live simply, but he carried with him the profound truth that helping others, even in small ways, could create a lasting impact. Maria and Lena had left to forge their own paths, but the bond they had formed with James remained unbroken. The women had repaid him in ways he would never forget, not through money, but through trust, gratitude, and the knowledge that his kindness had helped them reclaim their lives. In the end, James realized that life's true wealth was not measured in possessions or money, but in the connections we create, the help we offer, and the lives we touch. The journey he had shared with Maria and Lena was proof of that truth. It was a story of struggle, perseverance, growth, and profound human kindness. And as James continued his life, he carried the lesson in his heart, that when we give without expecting, we receive far more than we could ever imagine, sometimes in ways that leave a lasting imprint on our soul.